What is up, everybody? We are back here with the Yukon, and today we are going to be pulling out the transmission. Now, Wes was supposed to be helping me with this. As a matter of fact, I was here the other day, but then we got rained out. Wes only had a little bit of time to help me yesterday. I was going to do half of it yesterday with him, and then the other half today by myself. But since we got rained out and got nothing done yesterday, I'm just starting the video over again, and it's just going to be me. There's a few things that are just really weird about this car, so let me get under there. I'm probably gonna have to switch to my phone, and I'm gonna show you everything we need to do, and then let me also show you what is just so janky about this car. Now, unfortunately, unlike the junkyard car, I do have a lot of things that do have to be removed. These exhaust pipes on both sides need to be removed. The 15mm nuts up at the top of the exhaust were giving us troubles yesterday. I hit them with some rust penetrant yesterday before I left, and then I hit them again today just so that it would be a little bit looser. We've got to get out the front drive shaft, the rear drive shaft. We have to get out the transfer case. Should be easier to get the transfer case out with the engine in the car as opposed to with it out. And then we do have to obviously disconnect it from the front. Now, to get into the jankiness of this car, that's not how that's supposed to look. This is the front drive shaft, and as you can see, it's that bolt is not going through that hole on this bracket holding that in. So that's one thing that's really janky. But here's the one that's actually going to be a problem. So yeah, add that to the parking brake lines being all janky when I bought the car, and we've got a few problems. We're gonna go ahead and remove the exhaust first just to get it out of the way. Then I think we're gonna focus on getting the drive shafts out, and we'll go from there. Oh, that took the whole stud out. Whew. That's how tight it is. Okay, so the exhaust up by the manifold is disconnected, but I've run into a little bit of a snag. Let me show you what our problem is here. So as you can see here, this is one of the sides of the exhaust. This one's welded. That was something I already noticed. These are two 15mm nuts, and they're rounded now after me trying to take them off. And unfortunately, the designers of this vehicle put them on backwards. You can't get a ratchet in there, you can't get an impact in there. And then you got this bracket here that can't be removed, so more problems. If they had just, you know, flipped those 180 degrees to that side, ratchet, impacts, no problem. If it rounded like it did, it would be a little bit easier to get off. So what I've already gone ahead and done is there's 3 of these. I've already disconnected all of them along the way. I've got it hanging on this one right now, just barely. And we're gonna cut out this one like we were gonna plan. If I can't drill out those studs, it's gonna be a straight pipe exhaust modification. This is what's out. As you may have noticed, we had to cut the muffler there because in order to get that out, you have to take out the spare wheel. Well, guess whose car didn't come with the spare wheel lowering tool that I needed, so I figured I'm already gonna have to weld this thing back together to make it work anyway, so I might as well cut it some more. This is the exhaust bits that I have out so far. The third one, the one that I had to cut because it was welded anyway, has to come out, but it needs to drop the bracket to come out, at least unless I can get this higher off the ground, which I can't. But I'm gonna start the process of getting the drive shafts out, so we're gonna start with the front drive shaft to the front diff. All right, so these guys right here, they're just 11mm. And this is the thing I was complaining about earlier that is not connected properly, so at least when we put it back on, it will be properly connected. So coming underneath the car here, we have a few things we need to take care of. We've got this guy right here, which is the automatic gear selector. So when you pull on the gear selector, it pulls this, which selects it. We want to remove this entirely, which is a 13 and a 13, and then all the plugs with it will just stay connected. We do need to disconnect this though, which is pretty simple. We can just pry it out here, and then there is a clip here that we got to push up, and then we can slide it out of this, and this will kind of more just hang freely. We do have a plug here. This is still on the transmission. We have brake line there and there connected. We need to make sure that we pull those off before we drop the transmission because they're solid lines. Moving on to the transfer case, we have a few connectors to address. We have a plug here. So this is towards the front of the car, so we got a plug there. We have one here that is connected down to that guy right there, so we need to get that guy off. Then we have a few areas where we need to pull this off. Here we are from the back. We've got one wire on this side right there, and then another wire right there. Now these are all the wires that I can find. There are a few things on the other side of the transmission to address. We're going to start with these plugs just because I want those out of the way and just make sure they're taken care of. These 4 bolts, there's one there, and then 2 on that side as well. And they're all 15mm bolts, and that'll allow this pan to come down. And behind this pan will be the bolts I need connected to the flywheel to disconnect this from the engine directly. So we're gonna go ahead and do that right now, just while we have a chance. I have that cover off, and as you can see, there is about 6 of these 15mm bolts running along the flywheel here. And in order to access them, I can get to that one right now because it's in the right spot, but in order to access them, you have to turn the engine. I removed a bracket that was along here. That was one of the bolts there, and that allows me to access that wheel right there, which can turn the engine for me. It's a 24mm, so I've just got a 24mm on a breaker bar right there to remove all of these. Alright, so with the starter removed, which was 2 13mm, that might actually make this easier because I was struggling on the other side with enough leverage just because it was tight on space. So hopefully this side with no starter is a little bit easier. Plus I'm pulling down, which is easier than pushing up. So with that finally out of the way, it wasn't the hardest thing in the world. I did have to prop my leg up against the bar to keep it from rotating, but I got all 6 of those out. Next step that we're going to address is going to be getting this bar down. Now I'm not going to immediately lower it, but it is 2 16mm right there. There's 18s there, and then between the holes right there are 16mm. Now as you can see on those 18s over there, there is an 18 on the bottom and then there's a nut on top. Now usually those are staggered, like the nut on top is like a 19 or 17, just so you don't need 2 18s to get them off. But in the case of those ones, they're both 18s. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna remove both of these and then those nuts in there. Then I'm going to put my transmission jack underneath the transmission here. Then I'll go ahead and drop the whole bracket here. right, to the next step with this bracket out. These were really rusted. It was hard. We got these two lines. This is what I was waiting on. This back one I believe is a 19 and the front one's an 18. So got a 19 here. If it's the other way around, obviously I'll just let you guys know in post. All right, with these lines finally not in my way, I'm gonna go ahead and get rid of the dipstick. It's just a 15mm nut. Now the dipstick is out of the way as it's gonna go until we drop the transmission some more. We're gonna go ahead and remove these bolts right here. These are the transmission mount bolts. This is what's blocking us from getting to the last one of the transfer case bolts. And then we can get the transfer case off next. These are 15mm, by the way. Although so much tighter, these bolts right here are probably actually my best bet for getting the transfer case off, despite them being much tighter, just because these ones with the transmission, I can't reach that top one up there. So this may be how I did it at the junkyard, but I didn't really have to worry about that at the junkyard. There was A, more clearance, and B, you know, just other things that weren't in the way because, you know, the way it was in the car, so I was able to get a lot more out of it, a lot more easily. So here this just makes more sense, or at least it's making more sense right now, so we're gonna try it. I hate to say it, but this very well might require me to cut one of these in half with how they're hidden. Yeah, I'm just not able to reach them. I'm not getting them. Not with this, not with a regular wrench and not with a ratchet. So I'm gonna have to go rethink this. And by rethink this, I mean trip to the hardware store. All right, so I got a new tool. It's one of those swiveling headed ratcheting wrenches. Hopefully this will let me get up in there. These things are awful. I knew it when I bought it. This is why I don't buy these. This is why I don't even own one until today. It'd be great if it bent in the middle instead of at the edges, like here. Because then, at least it would be usable. But no, this is not cutting it for me. Cut my wrench in half. Luckily I have two 15mm wrenches, so it's not the end of the world, but you know, didn't want to have to. I didn't unfortunately cut it perfectly in half. So the half that I want right now is unfortunately the shorter of the two, so less leverage. But yeah. Let me quickly show you guys the trick. Hopefully you can see this, because this was really hurting my hand. So pressing on this was really hard to do. So what I did was a trick. I placed this in my hand, my other half, and then I put the metal against this, like this. Then I pressed, and then it distributed the weight across this whole piece right here, which allowed me to push on it a lot harder without getting hurt. So if you're ever in a bind like me, that's a good trick to try. Alrighty, let's see what we can do here. Wish me luck. So we are on the final stretch. There's only 7 bolts remaining to hold this transmission in. We have the transfer case completely removed. So they're all 15. You've got one there, so 2 here. You've got one up there somewhere, one in the center, and a repeat on the other side of the 3 on, like, right here. Get rid of the hardest ones first. These ones are tempting, they're easy to get to, but the hardest ones are the top ones, and they're gonna be much harder to do if they're the last ones too. So we're gonna go ahead and get those ones first. I'm gonna start with the one at the very top, see if I can find it and get it. I've got all the extensions needed and the ratchets. I even have an impact if I want to go the impact route. Quick intermission. 2 of the 15mm bolts actually have 13mm nuts on them, holding on brackets. I'm showered, I'm cleaned, I'm relaxed. Transmission has been taken out and shoved in the garage. That was an exhausting process. It was a lot more work than I had anticipated. I knew there was going to be challenges that were going to surprise me, but that one ultimately surprised me in a lot of ways. It did take me 5 days to do, but there are some things you need to keep in mind with that 5 days. One, I was doing it off site, so every time I needed a new tool, I had to come home or go buy it. Something that just takes up a lot of time, so those are some things that really slowed me down. Another thing, people do ask me every now and then how long a job will take. To be honest with you, I don't know, because I'm filming everything, and that is the slowest thing to do, is to set up a shot, make sure it's right. And when I have an issue, I set up the shot differently so that I can address the issue. So things like that will slow me down. As you guys may be able to tell, I'm pretty exhausted. And luckily there's no sun overhead right now, but there has been nothing but bright sunny days all the days that I've been doing this, except for the day we got rained out. So that was the one exception. So what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to get that other transmission refreshed. I'm still only halfway done with putting the BMW back together, but this will actually come out after that's done. So if you guys like the video, drop a like down below. It really helps me out. If you guys want to see more content like this, drop a subscribe. That also really helps me out. Anyway, guys, like I said, I'm pretty exhausted, so I'm going to call it a day. I'll see ya in the next video.